My name is James Olson, and I'm an Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Auckland. I want to talk with you today about dissecting the serial killer adventures in criminology. And essentially, I just want to quickly tell you a little bit about my own journey through criminology, not because it's exactly what your journey will be or could be, but because it might give you a sense of some of the broader contours of the discipline. There's a nice quote that I like from Marcel Proust, the novelist, who said that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new landscapes, but in seeing with new eyes. And for me, that's what education is about. It's about seeing things in new ways, about having insights and epiphanies, and looking at things, even familiar things, in a new way. So I want to talk a little bit about my own my way in and my own navigation through the field of criminology to give you a sense of some of what we do. So when I was 17 years old, I was interested in chemistry and physics and math and robotics and computers more than anything else. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I joined the United States Navy in the nuclear propulsion program and volunteered for the submarine service. Now, at the end of it, I wasn't a big fan of the Navy. It wasn't a good fit for me, and I didn't wind up going into physics or chemistry or mechanical engineering. But a lot of those early experiences were really formative for me. They were great. Not only did I learn to grow up a little bit and learn a little about who I wanted to be, but I also learned how to study and how to apply myself. And those were invaluable skills that I carried with me to university. The GI Bill helped me pay for my education at St. Mary's College of California, which is a small liberal arts school in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was the first in my family ever to graduate from university. And there I really flourished. I was able to do a split major between psychology and anthropology, and I did minors in archaeology and philosophy. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do afterwards. I knew I wanted to go on and study more. I wasn't done. But I didn't know if it was going to be law or if I was going to go into anthropology or psychology. And really what I wanted to do more than anything was to apply the principles that I was learning in my archaeology courses about looking at the pattern of evidence left behind on a site, at the material artifacts left behind, to draw inferences about the behavior and the cognitions of the people that had been there before. And I was convinced that this could be done valuably with crime scenes, that there is an archaeology of the crime scene. And I was thrilled when I realized that there were researchers at the FBI's behavioral science unit who were working in this tradition, who were trying to do exactly this. Unfortunately, my vision, I have horrible nearsightedness, and I couldn't be an FBI agent because of that. And furthermore, I became interested in this at about the same time everyone in the world wanted to be an FBI profiler. This was right after The Silence of the Lambs came out as an award-winning, Oscar-winning feature film. And so the only way I could really see to study the field was to do it academically. And I wound up going to the University of Cambridge at the Institute of Criminology, housed in the Faculty of Law, to do a master's degree, an MPhil thesis on offender profiling. By the end of this time, when I finished it, I was really critical of offender profiling. I was not impressed. But along the way, I realized it wasn't really serial murder or serial arson or serial rape that excited me about profiling. It was applying psychological principles to crime analysis. And what got my attention in an even more profound way was looking at the relationship between intelligence, usually measured by IQ score, and crime. The standard wisdom is that as IQ goes up, crime rates go down. The more intelligent you are, the less likely you are to become criminal. But I was skeptical about that, and I actually thought it may have something to do with where we do these studies. If we're doing all of these studies in prisons where people got caught, that may lead to a skewed representation. And I think there's also something to the kinds of questions, the kinds of crimes we ask people about. And so I wound up doing a large study looking at 424 people with IQ scores in the top 2% of the population, borderline genius or higher, and asking about a much broader range of crimes, including white-collar crimes and professional misconduct. It took me a long time, but eventually in 2016, I published the findings from this work, not just in a scatter of articles, but in a book that came out with University of California Press called Criminal Genius. Now, as I finished up my PhD, I was increasingly interested in fundamental legal questions. Where does law come from? Why is there civil law versus criminal law? Why does the state have the right and the exclusive right to punish? And why do we use prisons to punish rather than something else? And so I wound up going to law school at the University of California, Berkeley. I went back to the States and studied there for 3 years. While I was there, I was lucky enough to become involved in a capital appeal, a death penalty appeal, and worked with a client in San Quentin prison. And this led me to do even more thinking around punishment, around prisons, and this is all material that I use in my Criminology 202 classes today. After law school, I taught for about 3 years in Virginia, which was great. I did a lot of teaching on psychology and crime and intro to criminology. And in 2004, I was lucky enough to be selected as one of 4 United States Supreme Court fellows. So I went to Washington, D.C. for a year's fellowship, and I was there for actually 6 years. I stayed on after the fellowship and took on a position as the chief counsel for criminal law policy, and worked on things related to probation and parole and sentencing and incarceration. And I did that for about 5 years. But I did miss teaching. And so in 2010, I tendered my resignation and I left government service, a cushy job there, and I moved to New Zealand, where I was excited and remain excited about the idea of leading the then new criminology program at the University of Auckland. Since coming to Auckland, I've remained interested in punishment in prisons. I do a lot of teaching and research in this area. I'm currently working on a book that looks at the history of prisons and the cultural representations of prisons, especially in popular culture. I'm interested in ways that television shows and movies and novels shape our thinking about punishment and about prisons in particular. And at the graduate level, I do some teaching in criminological theory. There on the left side of this slide, you can see the famous duck-rabbit optical illusion. Changing your perspective, you can see either a duck or a rabbit. And I think that research data is a lot like the lines of this illusion, that we have a lot of, we have a sketchy representation of a picture, but it can be construed in multiple ways. And the value of theory, of a good theory, is in the same way that we can look at different shapes or constellations in the sky when we look at stars. A good theory allows us to align those or understand or interpret those in an efficient and in a profitable way. The next slide is some of the courses that we offer in the BA in criminology. I'm not going to read that to you, but I'll let you look at it. And finally, I guess I just want to invite you that if you're interested in learning more, there's a web link at the end here. If it looks like criminology might be part of your journey or might guide you on your own academic path, then I encourage you to take a look at our program and think about what we offer. And if we're lucky, then maybe I will actually get to see you in a classroom in the not too distant future. Thanks for your time and thanks for your attention.